Hi, everybody. It's quite new format for my for my video blog. We will start with this interesting project, and starting from now, I will try to record similar videos interviewing people who do open source development, mostly young projects, asking them questions, learning from their experience, maybe sharing something with you. So I will be the question asking person, and the person who I interview is the developer, the owner of an open source project. Today we meet Ilya. He's the creator of a project with almost 1,000 stars on GitHub, which is called ngs. This is, as I understand, a new language for writing scripts for DevOps, for ops operations, but he will tell us a little bit more right now, and then we will go into questions. Ilya, explain us what it is.
First of all, I'm glad to be here. It's very interesting for me to be interviewed. So the project, yes, it's currently it's for scripting, and in some point in the future, it will have the CLI, the shell interface. The reason it doesn't have the CLI yet is because the CLI would be in NGS itself. As, for example, opposed to other projects in which you start using the shell, and then if you want to modify something beneath the service, you can't, because you need to learn new programming language, such as like Go or Rust or something like that. And here the CLI will be completely in NGS. So if you like using the project, you're writing scripts, and now you want to customize, well, you are welcome, same language, just go ahead and modify. And it's also going to be easy because NGS is customizable. We'll get into that maybe later.
And what it's for, tell me, because I'm a quite frequent user of Bash, and I use Ruby. So I look at your project and I see that it's like it's something instead of Ruby, because it has cycles and has like variables inside and everything, which looks more convenient than Bash. But at the same time, we have the same stuff in Bash. So what's the...
Yeah, okay. So let's maybe do some thinking about what Bash provides and what Ruby or Python provide, and see where is this spot which is kind of empty. So Bash, it's something, let's say, historical, and it is pretty much focused on kind of DevOpsy things, which is the main focus is, of course, running external processes and file manipulation. Where Bash lacks completely is structured data. So, for example, you have like huge scripts, and each second line is a call to JQ, and then you have this field, have that field. So it's pretty awkward to work with data structures of any kind, structured data. If you take Python or Ruby or Go, for that matter, doesn't matter. They're general purpose programming languages. They are not focused on DevOpsy stuff. Some example that I came to recently is, let's say, for example, you have a file and you have number per line, right? So you have awk, right? It's like kind of the obvious choice. If you want to summarize the numbers, you just use awk. And why awk is better? Awk is not better. Awk is focused. It's focused on the use case that you have. And that is the advantage of NGS. It's focused on the DevOpsy stuff, which is it is both running external processes and file manipulation, but it also is increasingly more about data manipulation. And why is it so? Because we have APIs. And if, for example, you take like maybe 20 or 30 years back, most of the things that DevOps were doing, it was inside one machine. It was files and services and stuff like that. And now it is much more about talking to APIs. And well, APIs returns JSON, and they sometimes consume JSON. So you need to be able to manipulate the data structures in a pretty convenient way. So Ruby may be a bit more convenient for data manipulation, but Ruby doesn't have such elaborate facilities for running external programs. For example, NGS has 3 different syntaxes for running external programs. So, by the way, I want to explain kind of biggest rationale about syntax and what goes into syntax and what goes into standard library is just kind of by the frequency of use. So for example, you're calling external programs a lot, that's not going into libraries, that's a syntax, because it just happens a lot and it should be short. So, and if something is less frequent, then it goes into standard library. And then if it's like less frequent, then maybe somebody will write a third-party library. So it just has 3 syntaxes for running external programs. One of them is run the program and capture the output. And it's a backtick syntax. It's very similar to Bash. And you can also run external program and get reference to the process. It will be the process object in ngs, which also has like the PID field. So for example, you can write P equals, then dollar parentheses, and then your external program. And then you will have a reference, and then you can do maybe p.kill and p.wait or whatever on the process. And the third one is something which I did not see in any other language or library, is a double backtick syntax that runs external program and then parses the output into structured data. So right now it automatically detects JSON. So if you, for example, did a curl on something blah blah blah.json, and this brought the file to you, the double backtick syntax will also parse the output. So you can, on that, you can do dot blah blah blah, and that would be the field. And why is it a syntax? Because it's very frequent. Because right now, if you're talking to APIs, which might be directly with curl or might be with AWS CLI, which can return JSON, you will always want this structured data.
Okay, I think I understand. And when did you start this project?
2013.
It's like 8 years ago.
Yep, it's not very new anymore.
Why did you make it? What was the
frustration? A lot of frustration, yes. Oh. So I was sitting in front of the computer and I was, okay, this script, should it be in Bash or Python? And you know, this question, the presence of this question meant that something is already wrong, because neither of these felt like really good fit for what I'm doing, not Bash and not Python. And why? Because the use cases are such that are not fulfilled good by neither of these languages. By the way, I'm using Python because I'm more familiar with Python than with Ruby, so that's my example. But for the purposes of our talk, that would be like more like general purpose languages more than Python.
But you were a DevOps engineer or just a programmer? What you were doing at that time?
I'm doing both. I'm since I started my career in 2001, I'm doing both programming and DevOps, which was not called DevOps at the time. It was called system administration. I'm doing both all along. That's roughly 20 years now. And
but you were sitting in some company at that time, 2013, when you started this open source project, or you were just freelancing? What was your status?
At that time, I was freelancing. That was between 2008 and 2016. I was freelancing for 8 years.
So who did you make this product for?
That's just an open source project, and I solved my pain. And the hope is that other people with similar pain who can actually gain from this project and suffer less. It was actually,
It's a language you cannot create it in just a few weeks. So probably you started it in 2013. And
yes, sure.
How much time you spent first to make something workable, some first version?
Oh, well, it depends actually what you call the first version. I had a POC. It was, I don't know, maybe a couple of months. It was POC in JavaScript. I knew I was going to throw this away. So the language actually didn't matter. I just wanted to get some feeling how that would be.
So you wrote in JavaScript this syntax parsing and all the...
No. I don't write syntax parsers. I use the library. Okay. I used a JavaScript library. Then in second implementation, it was in Lisp. And I also used a library for syntax. And now it's in C. And I also use a library for syntax parsing. I think it's just a lot of work, and it's not very productive work.
So you spent a few months to create the first prototype. A few months. Correct?
I think so, yes. It's hard to remember, but it's actually easy to check, because if you check out the GitHub project, you will see it in there, and you can actually see when.
So did you use it in some real project back then in 2013? Did you put this in production after a few months of work? When you get the prototype, did you start using it?
I am writing some scripts here and there. I am not putting that into like completely production because right now you will have a shortage of programmers. So I don't want to leave my client in a state where they have the scripts and I'm the only person that can solve this critical problem. So it for now it is maybe scripts that doing something less critical, like maybe backups or something like that. That something that will not have to be solved like in 5 minutes when the production is down. It's just would be irresponsible of me.
So if the customer, okay, not maybe not now, let's get again back to this 7 years ago. So the customer was asking you to develop something and you knew that your language would be better, suitable for them, you still would use Bash or Python or whatever.
Yes, unfortunately. So I
Huh.
have this bunch of scripts which are in Bash and Python. So I roughly divided this into two big chunks. One of them is what runs inside machine and sets up, let's for example, do Nginx or Apache. And the other one is the outside framework, which would call the AWS APIs. And that's in Python. But by the way, why would I use, for example, Bash for setting up Nginx or Apache or whatever, and not, for example, Chef or Puppet, which was actually pretty popular at the time?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's actually declining now with the use of containers. But let's take, it's my like kind of favorite pet peeve, Nginx setup. Okay, my Bash script was about maybe 50 lines to set up Nginx. At this time, the Puppet module for Nginx was about 2.5K lines. And it actually did not include the functionality which I needed. Probably it includes already now by now, but at the time it was I needed the DH params file or something like that, and it just wasn't in there. And it's I think that I would like to use the simplest solution which fits my requirements, and in that case it was Bash.
And what about now? Do you do it now? Do you use it now in production projects? Your language, NGS.
Somewhat, yes. So, for example, the most recent project, also again, because and nothing is forever, right? So I don't want to like leave my place with a bunch of NGS scripts which are not maintainable because I'm not there. Could
Yeah, but that's a
potentially be.
thousand a thousand stars on GitHub. It's pretty mature project. It's 7 years old. So if even if you go and we don't see you anymore, then still we have the documentation. We have the
Yes, you have, but I think you will be hardly pressed to find people which know already NGS. I don't think it's a problem to get into NGS, and it probably is not that big of a problem to fix a script in NGS, but still this situation when you have a script in a language that you don't have people for, that's problematic, I think.
And how did you promote it when you created the first prototype? The first question is how much attention you got, how many people actually saw your product, how many people gave you stars, and where you have been at that time 7 years ago. Did you have a very popular GitHub profile? What about the community? Tell us the story. How did it happen?
Actually, at the time, and I think even as of today, I pretty much suck at marketing. So, for example, the first about I think 300 stars I got because my friend, actually it was friend and the client, they published a link on Hacker News. That's how I got my first about 300, I think, stars. And yeah, I'm trying to get the word out, and I think it's kind of a shame that I need to do so much marketing to get anywhere with this project, because I think it's a good project. And I spoke, I don't have the permission, so I can't tell who that was, but from one of the big known companies, I spoke to a person like higher up, and he told me, or she, and he told me that the technical aspects of the project are responsible for 20% of the success. And for me, as mostly technical person, it's like, wow, I will need to learn a lot to enable to be getting anywhere with this project.
And what goes for this 80%? What's there? If 20% for technical, then 80% for what?
All the rest.
Like what? Did he or she
Marketing.
tell you about it? Marketing.
Of course.
So do you do
Because,
this marketing? Tell us about what do you do?
well, I try to follow conversations on social networks, and sometimes I have something meaningful to contribute, and that draws some attention. Sometimes it's I see solutions in other languages and they say, okay, that would be twice short in an NGS. So I put my solution. Or it would be like 3 times cleaner, whatever.
Do you post on Stack Overflow? Because I was doing that for my project.
Well, I'm not posting because, what is happening, when people ask on Stack Overflow how they solve X, they typically mean in any of the popular languages. They don't mean on something which is not known and will get them in trouble. Yeah. So I think right now NGS would be best for non-critical, non-mission critical things, but probably with time, when people get into the language more, and they will understand how much better it is.
I think you're too humble, because I do it all the time. When I find some question, they ask like how to do this in Apache library, and I have my own library for doing the same. So I just jump in there and I post my answer and I say, hey, this is not about Apache actually, but you can do it in my library faster. And some of my answers actually got deleted from Stack Overflow. It happened. Yeah, it happened. But some of them stay there and they get some upvotes, and that's how I get some traffic.
Yeah, I don't know. I need to think about this maybe, because I really think that for quite a few use cases, NGS would be the best solution, the technically best solution. By the way, we can actually go a bit into the language itself, and I could explain why exactly it's better.
Yeah, of course. Maybe you can share the screen and show us something, like some scripts.
Besides the language, there's a repository which is called NSD, that is short for NGS Scripts Dumpster. And I put some scripts here, pretty much random scripts. Let's do this. So this script, okay, it goes over AWS pipeline and tells which CloudFormation stacks the pipeline creates. So because we are using AWS code pipeline, and each pipeline can create more than one CloudFormation stack. And sometimes it's very convenient to know which pipeline created which stacks. So what you see here is example run. Okay, so for example, that's the pipeline name. And then it found these stacks which were created by this pipeline. So what it actually is, it's just dig into JSON structure and output, what you have found. So here are a couple of things that are worth mentioning. First of all, main. Okay, main function in NGS. It has parameters, so these parameters are automatically parsed by NGS from the command line. So, for example, you see here that this script runs and it gets command line argument here, and it automatically gets into this name because the language does that. Okay, there's also optional argument which says J, and J is Boolean, and if it's not present, the default it's false. And J actually makes the output to be JSON, as you can see in this example. So that would be a JSON array. So if you want to combine next tool, which can do JSON, then you can maybe use this flag. So let's go over just a bit about the script. It's just a randomly chosen script that was here open. So first of all, double backtick syntax, that means run external program and parse the output. So P here is already data, which is structured data. So I can do dot pipeline, dot stage, dot actions, then flatten, because it's like deeply nested. So what's interesting? What interesting we have here? Log. Okay, so this comment will be logged, and it looks like this. Okay, and to log the command, all I needed to do is actually say log colon. Okay, also there's a log function. Okay, why is it in the language? Because it's just very common. You always see the bash scripts, and at the top they have functions defined: log, debug, warn, error, all that stuff. It's just so repetitive that I just factored that out into the language, and you can just use it. Okay, you want to report an error, error. Okay, and let's say you have some fatal condition, you do exit. So what's interesting about exit? It's again shows the optimization for the common use case. So for example, exit, which you have in the middle of your program, most of the languages would do the exit code 0 by default, but that's just not the case. If you have exit in the middle of your program, that's typically because something happened, something bad happened already. You just want to report the error. So you can see that the exit code here is 1 by default if you use exit. Because otherwise you just typically forget the exit code and it returns 0, and then it's kind of okay, but it's not okay. You exited in the middle, probably something was wrong. So what else we see here in the script? So we see filter, which is kind of a bit of functional programming, which I kind of extended. So typically you see filter gets a predicate. In NGS, filter gets a pattern. And one of the cases of pattern could be a predicate. So here you could pass a function or a pattern like this. So in this JSON that was returned by the command, I'm looking for this pattern. So we have action type, and it has to be like one.
So hold on, how do you pass
this? And then action mode should be one of these guys. So any of will match either one of them.
So you're passing this array. It's not an array; it's an object. So you pass this object to as a filter. So this object has to have certain fields, certain attributes, which explain how to filter something, right?
Yeah, I can give like maybe a shorter example, and then it will be like cleaner. Okay, we have array with objects a1, let's say 2, and I don't know b sorry, and b3, and I want to filter on that. On let's say I want to filter where a is actually 1. Sorry, what happened? Yeah, forgot. Yeah. Okay, so the result of this filtering is the first object.
Yeah, this one is clear, but in your case, which you have on top, it's completely different. There's some configuration, action type. Oh, there's your okay.
It's just it's just data, yeah.
Just different names, okay.
And it's a bit deeper. So, for example, but these patterns, they are recursive. So, for example, I can say, so 1 is also pattern. So, simple scalar values, they just match themselves. But for example, I can say here it should be an integer.
And where did you get this idea? Like, is it inherited from some other language, or it's yours? This type of filtering.
Well, I'm working on pattern matching. It's a kind of the greater vision of pattern matching. Pattern matching is not a new idea. What is always difficult to do is, to have like a good external idea, but it's half the work. The rest of the work is to make it fit into the language in the proper way. So I think that pattern matching, for example, this is very powerful and also very kind of straightforward way to express yourself. So I think that pattern matching should be everywhere. So there are many functions in NGS which get patterns. So for example, there is a function which is called the1. Okay, that means that there should be exactly one object which should match the pattern, and then this object is returned. Here we see that it actually is supposed to return 2 objects, so that's an exception. Okay, but if we say 1, we got exactly the first object. You can see it's not an array anymore with 1 element. The element is extracted, so now it's the top level. So now we have this object.
And you think this pattern matching is like a cornerstone of your language? It's like an important feature?
It is a very important feature. Unfortunately, I started working on it not too much time ago, but it should be. it's halfway already there. And if you can actually, you asked about, you know, how, where I got this idea. So we can see on NGS wiki, sorry, NGS wiki, I called it the UPM. That's universal pattern matching. Why is it universal? Because it's supposed to be very generalized. For example, you have like regular expressions, right? But they can only match strings, right? So you need to something like to be much more generic. And actually, there is a prior art, and I have a section on that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So when I design, I do go over quite a bunch of stuff which was previously done. But the challenge here is mostly how you fit it into the language. Because otherwise it will be just another feature which doesn't talk with any other features in the language, but it should. So for example, when I do dot filter and filter gets a pattern, what's interesting in JS, it could be a predicate, which is a function with one parameter which returns Boolean, or it can be some more elaborate pattern. I think that's interesting combination, and I think that's where the kind of work, the mental work goes, is to try to see how the external ideas match your language and to do the best match between this.
And you think that this dealing with JSON structures is important for DevOps? Like this,
I think it's very important. I think it's increasingly important because talking to APIs is just increasing. All you do is talking to APIs now. Like for example, do something in Amazon. It's
and how people do
APIs.
it right now without your language. How do we do it right now?
Well, depends. You can do it in, for example, Python or whatever. But I think NGS is more concise with this. So by the way, Python got pattern matching in 3.10, and it's
but it's inconvenient to match Bash and Python together. Probably understand your point right now. So because if I write in Bash, then I cannot write everything in Python because it's inconvenient for DevOps. I need Bash, and then if I connect Bash with Python, when I fetch something in JSON, and then I need to parse it, then I go to Python and I go back. So all these connections are quite noisy, quite annoying. So I need to. So you match it together. So I have like Bash, and then inside this Bash, right here, I have the manipulations with the JSON.
Yeah, so it's like all the things that you need, they just in one language. It's both about external programs and it's both about data manipulation.
Okay, and how do we install this NGS? Because I I actually installed it today through Brew through Homebrew for Mac, and it went quite well. So which platforms do you support?
Well, Brew is one of them. Actually, it's not I personally support. Somebody did it, which is
not you.
No, not me.
Nice.
That's very nice.
And how did it happen? Can you tell the story?
I don't know. I was just contacted someday, and this person asked, is it okay? I actually don't remember what exactly was asked. So I was contacted one day. That's it.
Through like a pull request, or they just emailed
No,
you?
on the email.
So they said, is it okay if I put it on Homebrew?
Yes, something like that.
And you said, okay, yeah. Go for it.
I actually think, if I remember, it's hard for me to remember, but I actually think it was more about, oh, I have this problem. Can you help me to solve this problem? I'm putting it on Brew. It's something like that.
because it's not your account there on Brew. So
no, it's not my account. It's in another repository, and actually, it's not even on my GitHub. It's just another repository of the Brew, so it's over there. Yeah.
Nice. And what about this APT and Yum, other platforms, these binary managers?
Yeah, I started then I somehow put it on hold for a very long time. It's now on hold. There should be at some point in time a Debian package. My friend did Snap. I'm not sure it's up to date, but there is a Snap.
So it's not there. So if I install Ubuntu, then I cannot get your NGS right of the
I think box? You should be able to run it with Snap.
Snap? What the hell is Snap?
Snap is package manager from Canonical.
Wow.
Yes.
Well, we all use APT right now, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so it's not there is no apt package. No Debian package for now.
Why don't you make it?
Well, because I have limited time on my hands, and then I focus mostly on the use cases that I have at work. So, for example, one of the reasons that the CLI is not there yet, because I'm kind of trying to solve more of the problems that I have at work, for
No, but
which I
the
use
APT
NGS.
APT is extremely important because, like, I mean,
It is, but
you'll
it
open
also,
the door for like thousands of programmers right now to use you right
yes,
in Ubuntu.
you are correct, but it's also a bunch of work. Look at this. So I
Yeah.
started at some point. So you have to do
Okay.
this change log, this compat, which I don't remember what it was, this control file. It is a bunch of work, and then you need to contact Debian guys and to see how they let you in even.
Of course.
You know it, it 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 is quite some work. I mean, I would be glad if somebody actually did that. I'm just not getting to it.
That would boost your popularity like amazingly, for
I
sure.
understand.
Uh-huh. That
Yeah,
was actually that was one of my questions I wanted to ask you. So, what would you do if somebody would just, step in and sponsor your work on this project? Let's say give you some
very
money
good.
so that you can spend like, I don't know, 10 hours every month on this project to maintain it. Some companies do that. Some big companies, they sponsor open source projects. So my question is, what would you do in these 10 hours every month? How would you?
Okay, okay. So the nearest plan is that I have to finish what I'm doing right now, and that is work with deeply nested data structures. I need it for my work, and then I finally got into the UI, the CLI, and UI in general. Um,
So
then
let me rephrase my question. The company will step in and say, okay, we're gonna sponsor you for like 10 hours a week or 10 hours a month. I don't know how much time exactly, but we would like to see. Right now, you have 900 stars on GitHub. We would like to see 5,000 stars in a year. If you don't do that, we're gonna stop supporting you. Would
yeah,
you take that
I
challenge?
think that the my answer to that would probably be, well, guys, if you want to be like cost effective, hire a marketing person instead. I think that
Who
can
knows
help a
how to
lot.
do marketing in open source? Nobody can do that. I mean, not no
Well,
no
there
company.
are some DevRel guys and whatnot. I think that there should be people out there who can do this. I mean,
You think?
it makes sense.
I think it depends. You told us you told it yourself. You said it yourself that you got somehow on Hacker News on the top page probably, and that's how you got 300 stars. So no marketing person can do that for you. Only you know how to structure your product repository so that other programmers will give you the stars. Because we're talking about not like promotion on YouTube. We're talking about programmers who will actually get your product and use your product. So I don't think any marketing money will help in this case. We can sponsor, I don't know, we can pay for a lot of promotion on Twitter and on YouTube, but that will give you zero result on GitHub. On GitHub only programmers give you stars, so you need to do something with the product. For example, make it available on Ubuntu, available on CentOS, somehow, I don't know, something
That
like
would be
that.
good. That's also possible. I actually got this feedback from my friend too, which is he wants to get into it, and then he says, well, each time I just think about this and I don't have apps install.
Yeah, so this is one of
I
the things. So think about other things, like many other things, like 10 things, 20 things, which you will go through during the year if somebody would help you out. Because the project it looks popularity wise, it looks like on the edge. So it's not young anymore. It's not small. It's not like 50 stars, and it's
Mhm,
not mature enough. So it's not like 5,000 stars. So how
mhm.
to jump from this point to 5,000? That's a very tricky question. You can stay where you are forever and that's it. The project will be dead, or you can make this move, and if you go to 5,000, then you will be something comparable to popular tools for DevOps. So really, like people who need tools like that from big companies, from Google, from Amazon, they will look at you and think, okay, it's pretty mature, 5,000 stars, so we can trust this product. Okay, we can use it for our own purposes, and then maybe eventually Amazon one day will say, we recommend this language for the scripts you write for cloud formation or something. So your
Mhm.
language may become like Google, picked Kotlin one day because
Yeah.
Kotlin was mature enough. So you know the story. So Google said, okay, this is the language we recommend for Android applications. So one day maybe Amazon will step in and say, we recommend this language because It's pretty mature. It's good enough. They're full documentation. It's well maintained. We have a team which supports it. So we recommend it. And then at that point, you will get from 5,000 stars to 25,000 stars. And then you.
I see what you mean. I think I would agree on the packaging thingy. That is important. What else? I don't know. I'm so
Okay, think about it for a moment. I'll ask my
yeah,
next
yeah.
question. I see that it's written in C language. Is it right?
Yes.
So how did you? So first of all, it was JavaScript, as I understand. Then you moved to Lisp, if I got you
Yes.
properly, and
Yep.
then you moved to C, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. So the reasoning behind Lisp was as follows. Lisp was very interesting for me time as a language. So, and I thought that was an opportunity, but that's from like my personal perspective. So the practical reasoning behind Lisp was as such. Lisps have compilers, and by the nature of of the language of Lisp, the compiler must be available at runtime. So I was thinking, okay, NGS runs, then I have some program in NGS. I compile it at runtime to Lisp, and then Lisp compiler compiles it into machine code at runtime, and it runs fast. So, and I hit two very big problems with that. First of all, I took what I thought was the most mature implementation of Lisp, which was SBCL. I think it is very mature implementation. And what I had noticeable delay when I was compiling even the smallest program, like I don't know, 50 characters. So for a shell, it's just unacceptable. You hit enter and then you just wait half a second for anything to happen. That's completely unacceptable. And the other thing you see here on the screen, there's a stack trace. Okay, so in Lisp, I couldn't figure out how to do the stack trace without eating 50% of the CPU. And that is also unacceptable performance hit. And at that point, I thought, okay, guys, okay, so if I even solve both of these problems somehow, I'm so afraid that I will be hitting some walls sometime that I just don't want it. And I looked at Bash, Ruby, and Python. Well, they were all in C, and I thought, okay, in C I will never be stuck. And I also have like some other places to look when something happens. I can look how they did it, which is interesting enough. Like almost did not happen. It's like never happened that I actually copy pasted something from there. I looked at them, but it was for general ideas, much more than copy paste or something like that. So yeah, it's in C, but the part which is in C in NGS, I intentionally keep it very small. So C exposes some interfaces into the language, and then the standard library, which I can show in a moment, does all the rest. So standard library has a lot of functionality. It is now what? Let's see.
how big is how big is the code base? How many lines of code do you have in C?
Okay, so C, actually, let's do some find. Let's do it just online. Okay, C, okay, that is build is, okay, build is not my thing, so let's do without the build. Okay, that looks like my stuff.
It's very small, or they are large.
Let's see. No, that's not, I meant xargs. Yeah.
It's not huge.
8K lines. VM, yeah, VM is the most of the thing. VM is actually the runtime. It has the VM itself is a bytecode, and it also has all these C functions which are exposed into the language. So that's around 5K.
So it seems like most of the efforts you spent on documentation, on explaining how things should work in this project.
I would say I'm spending mostly on the language itself, which is in NGS.
Yeah.
Let's see how much NGS code I have for a moment. Okay, 17K in NGS of different. Yeah, I have AWS library here. which is kind of an interesting experiment. Yeah, and second version of that library, that's another 2K lines. But the standard library, that's where the biggest chunk of the code goes.
So you wrote a lot of code in your language, not
Yes.
in C. So in C you have the core and then the library. Okay, that's a
Yeah.
runtime.
So if at any point in time I would like to rewrite the C part into something else, it should be a relatively small effort. Well, relatively. By the way, regarding effort, what saved me a bunch of effort is these two libraries which I have in C. One of them, as we discussed, it's for syntax, and the other one is garbage collector. So many people don't know, but C has runtime garbage collection. It's just a library. You take it and you use, instead of malloc function, you use whatever they provide, and you just don't need the free function, and you're good. Yeah. And I think that it would probably roughly the same amount of effort as the language itself. I looked into this garbage collection library. It's a lot of effort.
Yeah, and do you have unit tests by any chance?
I have a bunch of tests. So, and I thought at the time that I invented something about the testing, but then I seen it in other languages. So for example, we can just test. Okay. Any line which starts with test, that's a test. So when I run my tests, it takes from after the test until the end of line, and that's a test. So in this test, they just use go after the function. It doesn't matter where they are, but from the convenience perspective, they come after the function which they test. So I have, well, you can see 420 matches. I think I have more tests than that. Yes, because there are other files too. Yeah, so there are like about 600 or 700 small tests. And well, it proved to be very useful because I frequently change something and then I see, oh, I broke it. And then the test catches it. So it was good investment of my time.
And you also write a blog, right?
Yes, I do have it.
How popular is it? And how much time you spend on this?
Unfortunately, not as much as I would like because I have many ideas. But if you want to express your idea in some interesting way, that takes hours. Each blog post will take several hours, maybe a day
of days work. Sometimes.
Yeah, well, it depends how deep you want to go.
But you write it for 12 years already. It's quite old.
Yes. And what's interesting, actually, I was thinking lately, one of my first articles was what's wrong with HTTP. And, over time, it's actually proved to be kind of correct because one of the things that I claimed about HTTP, well, it's textual format, but actually what is, the typical use case is actually machine is parsing it, not human. So why do it text? Because, if you have binary format, it's easier to parse for the machine. So you save CPU cycles, you save energy. So, if you're fighting for the greener future, yeah.
And do you promote your product on the blog?
Yes. And it's mostly because the product solves my frustration and I write the blog about my frustrations. So it's kind of matches.
Do you have any active contributors to your project? People who contribute more or less frequently?
Unfortunately, no. There were several contributors over time. They were contributing, but then it ended. Unfortunately, I would like to have more contributors and the permanent contributors. I think it's important for the project, and I think it's.
And how much time you spend every week or every month on this project, on this product?
Well, I was spending up to a few years ago. I was spending huge chunks of my time, but then right now I have much less free time, so it would be, I don't know, maybe 20 hours a month, something like that.
So like 3, 4, 5 hours a week. Yeah, but that's still enough. 5 hours a week, it's like half a day every week.
5 hours.
Do you spend it on new features or bug fixing? Do people submit bugs to your repository?
Infrequently, yes. It's mostly, Actually, I keep track of what I'm working on in the issues tracker on GitHub. Sometimes I submit bugs because I just hit some cases. So what was the question again?
I'm interested how much time you spend on doing this, and
not as much as I would like.
and how you combine this with your work where you make money, because here I can understand you spend time, but how you
Yes.
Because most people who watch us right now, they don't have their own open source project, or maybe they have a very small one. You have pretty big one, and you do it for many years, and somehow you find time for this, even though you're working in making money and in some commercial projects. So my question is, how can you do that at the same time?
Well,
what's your recipe? What's your trick? What's your recipe? How do you?
I think persistence is the recipe here. I'm working on this consistently for years. Most of my free time goes into this project. You just
is it fun for you? Is it like joy? You enjoy doing this? Like what motivates you?
It is somewhat enjoyable, but it certainly didn't start from the point, oh, I want to make my own language. No, it started, oh, fuck, all of this is such crap. By the way, I also feel that all languages are crap, including this language. And how this language is maybe better because it's focused on the use cases. And I am not unable to get out of this box thinking that all the languages are in. And we are just, as humanity, we are not there yet. We don't understand programming. We don't know how to do it right. We are in deep shit with programming, okay? It is such a crap all over, okay? And I'm just trying to suffer less when I do my job, my day job. So I use NGS where in places where I can and have less pain over there. That's pretty much it. It is interesting from the technical perspective, but let's say if there was already a language which would solve my problems in a convenient manner, I wouldn't do this, and I would probably invest more time in learning other stuff. I don't know, maybe doing something else. I'm filling a gap. But by the way, there are quite a few other projects which are actually agreeing with the problem, but we don't agree with them on the solution. So there are quite a bunch of other shells which are modern, but they solve the problem very differently from me. And I think that the distinction, if you wanted to put it in few words, NGS is a programming language first, as opposed to other solutions which are shell first, and they focus on the UI and the user experience when you are in the shell itself. And I started with the language first, and that's because I think that the CLI should be in the language itself.
Interesting. So what do you think the future is bright for your product? What's coming the next 5 years?
I don't know. It's completely unclear.
Are you planning to make some other products in the future, or you want to stay dedicated to this one until it gets super
I think
popular?
I'll be on this one. I mean, from my perspective, even if nobody else uses it would be sad, but it does solve my problems, and I suffer less when I use it, so that's already good.
Cool. That's a
good I just hope that other people that have the same problems as I have might find this convenient or maybe productive.
Okay, cool. Then thanks for the talk. I think we are covered most of the topics, and I wish you all the best in the project. We will definitely take a look at. I mean, keep an eye on your project, and maybe we'll see some areas of cooperation in the future.
Oh, that would be great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
We'll talk about this. We'll think about this. Thanks for coming. Okay. Thanks for the time. Bye-bye.
It was a pleasure to be here. Bye-bye.